So we have the verdict, and the verdict is that no rule was broken. No financial fair play rule was broken, despite the fact that UEFA considered that that was the case, and after their own analysis, they thought that Manchester City had done so. The conclusion of CAS is that Manchester City didn't disguise equity funding. That means the owner putting money from his own pocket as sponsorship contributions, but did fail to cooperate with authorities. It's a €10 million fine, but obviously affordable by Manchester City. In any case, what was interesting all along was that Manchester City always said, "We've done nothing wrong." From the officers, that's the messages you got. And from Pep Guardiola, the message was always the same one, which was, I had to trust the people I'm working with. They've done well so far for me, so I think we will be fine. And the conclusion from CAS is that, yes, financial fair play rules were not broken. It's an interesting period, of course, for financial fair play. This involved a sponsorship of 2012-2016, but now we will see the rules a little bit loose because clubs have stopped having the kind of money that they expected because of the pandemic, and I think financial fair play may relax a little bit for the next 2 or 3 years. That's a different story, but put all that together, the fact that City never had a plan B, or so they said, because they thought they were going to be right, plus the context of the situation in terms of the pandemic and the money that's coming in, etc., means that the plan that Manchester City had designed will stay in place. Well, what was this? Or what is this plan? This plan A was certainly there were players that were thinking about it in terms of coming to Manchester City, but the players that they had identified for the roles that I will tell you now they're looking for, the number one choices, they were convinced to come no matter what. So again, there was a good line that Manchester City and a good situation that Manchester City were happy about, but slow down the process. Not only the CAS situation, but the pandemic and the money available meant that despite the fact that there is agreement with players, verbal agreements, now everything will have to be obviously put in paper, and eventually clubs will have to talk about transfers. But the first choices of players were happy to come. That's the message that Manchester City got. And what will those players be? Well, to replace Sané, Manchester City have identified a very talented young player, I'll tell you more soon, that will leave his team and will go to Manchester City. And this is also a winger that can come inside. Somebody, in my eyes, one of the most exciting players around, young players around. And obviously, this was going to happen no matter what, because he's got his own contractual situation in his club. So that's coming in, a replacement for Sané. That's the first thing that they were looking at. But also the most important thing is the defense. Why? It's obvious, isn't it? The stats of Manchester City defending were not great. Remember anyway that what Pep Guardiola tends to say is that he can prepare the team from box to box, if you like. Not in the box. Obviously, there's word that can be put in terms of how you defend individually and collectively as well, and how you attack and finish games. Yes, that's true. But the main role of the manager, as Pep Guardiola sees it, is to get the ball from one box to the other, basically. And the problem has been in both boxes, a little bit like the first season of Pep Guardiola at Manchester City. They individual mistakes and the bad defending as well, collectively has meant that they conceded far too many goals. And on the other box, they need a lot of chances to score goals. They create a lot of chances, but in terms of stats on finishing, they're not the best by a mile. So what can you improve for Manchester City to make a jump? And the decision has been, let's get a couple of centre-backs. Now they want a left-footed one that can be the third centre-back, and they want another centre-back, right-footed, who can be starting alongside Laporte. Koulibaly certainly is in the list, a list of 4 centre-backs. So he will be one that they will try to get. How about Eric Garcia? There's two stories about it. I've told you already that Barcelona won Eric Garcia. That's 100% true. The message that Barcelona has been given us, leaked, is that the player is happy to come to Barcelona. Well, you can argue that one, because that, of course, can be part of the line that Barcelona puts out there to actually say, to City, player wants to come and, give it to us for less money. He's got still, if I'm not mistaken, is it 2 years left in his contract? In any case, Barcelona are willing to pay for him, but I don't know where they're going to get the money. So it could well be that, yes, they want him, but they cannot afford him, and that could be a possibility. Or, as Barcelona would like, the player forces his way out. I'm not sure the player is going to do that. But in any case, Eric Garcia, there's a situation there. Eric Garcia, who is going to be the fourth centre-back of Manchester City, and Manchester City have to plan with a life with him or without him. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. What else? But to be able to, now that they identified the gaps, and those are the ones, two centre-backs, and a winger will be the main priority. A second goalkeeper, as Claudio Bravo, as I told you earlier, he's going to leave. It's how much money there is for them to be able to do that. So they have to look at the debts that and the money that's not coming in because of the pandemic. That's the first thing. Obviously, they will have to see what happens with the Champions League, because if they win it, that's an extra 40 million euros. If they win the FA Cup, that's another 5 million euros. If they sell John Stones and Otamendi, which of course they're in the market, that means more money. So all that has to be put in place before they actually can see how much they can spend and then which players they're going for. But as I said, the first target of those players, and for instance the replacements of Sané, as I said, is a very clear target. But they have to see if their club sell and if they have the money for it. So that's where at least they can speed things up now that the verdict is out. What else can I tell you? For me, it's the first time really that Pep Guardiola is resetting the team, rebuilding it. And some will say, yeah, well, he did that on the second year at Manchester City, but really it was part of the design of his first squad at Manchester City, which included, even though he wasn't at Manchester City at the time, Kevin De Bruyne. Kevin De Bruyne was a choice of Chief Kyrgyzstan, but he told Pep Guardiola, and he said, yeah, go for him. He's a top player. A year later, Pep Guardiola arrived. But they realized very quickly that they had problems with fullbacks, and they had to make the changes that they made on his year after his arrival. That's part of the building of a squad that has been so successful and has given so many afternoons and evenings of good football. But now this is the first time I think that he rebuilds a side. Okay, that's given me a lot of success and happiness, but now something else has happened. It's not really a huge rebuild though, because as I say, the focus is going to be at the back. Everything else they think they've got sorted. The last thing is the future of Pep Guardiola. He had said anyway that he was going to stay until the end of his contract, which is next season. This has been such a strange season as well that feels like you have to scrap it of your mind in a way. What I mean by that is that he would have liked one full season without interruptions like everybody else, I imagine. But anyway, has given him a lot of lessons of what the team needs and what he has to do to improve. And that's what he will aim to do, win the league. Let's see what happens in the Champions League, but be even as good or better than in the Champions League this season. That will be the target. Remember that what Pep Guardiola was told when he first arrived is, we want you to dominate the domestic titles. And he has done an era of success domestically, obviously not so much in the Premier League this season, but they can still get domestic titles, of course, with the FA Cup added to it. And regularly to be semi-finalist in the Champions League. That's the thing that hasn't happened yet. But that was the plan from the beginning. So in terms of judging the plan, we'll have to see at the end of his contract next season if he considers that he's done a job already, or a good enough job, or the job that was asked of him. As I say, he's quite advanced in that plan, and let's see what happens in the Champions League this season. But if Manchester City manages to make a very competitive team, one that turns things around domestically and impresses in Europe next season, not just this season, but next season, Manchester City think that they can convince Pep Guardiola to stay an extra year. Perhaps not much more than that. But the hope is that he renews his contract at some point, one extra year. So finish in 2022. We will have to see, but they will play the cards cleverly because they realize in a way that the era of Pep Guardiola is finishing at Manchester City, but there's still things to do. So one more year is guaranteed. They hope for an extra year. And then perhaps it will be time for Pep Guardiola to move on. We'll keep an eye on that as well. But obviously the question as now, how does this affect Manchester City, has been answered now by me anyway. The question, if you ask the same, what does the future looks like for Manchester City? And you ask, say, the 10th of September, when you know the debts of the team, the club, when you know which players have said yes, which clubs are willing to sell, etc. It will be a different kind of answer. But right now, this is where we are. I thought I wanted to bring that early to you and hope that that I made sense and that you understand the position in which Manchester City are now. Obviously, a happy club. People will look at the verdict, and some will be happy, some not so happy. But you have to look from the CAS point of view. This is the neutral ground, and CAS have decided, as I said, that City didn't disguise equity funding as sponsorship contributions, but did fail to cooperate with the authorities. And some will say, why did they fail to cooperate with authorities? City perhaps will add that they did not feel that UEFA was doing a fair enough job, because it was a case presented by UEFA, prosecuted by UEFA, and judged by UEFA. So perhaps that was where the relationship broke down a little bit. We'll hear much more. Manchester City already come out with their statement. Pep Guardiola said that he will comment as well at this point, as it's just happened. I don't know what the response has been, but I'm sure by the time you hear this, you probably know more. So I thought I'll send you that, and remember to subscribe and come to the podcast sometimes, the Pure Football Pod, at Pure Football Pod on Twitter, and obviously you can get it in Spotify and Apple and wherever you get your podcasts. The YouTube channel will continue with great interview, I would say, not just a good one, a great interview that's going to be published in the next day or two, and more things happening.